To our listeners, welcome to this episode. Please be advised that this episode contains content that may be severely triggering and discussions on extreme narcissistic abuse and survival, including personal histories and stories from the host and guest. While we share to empower those who resonate and to teach others, these experiences are ours alone. We apologize for the length, as we felt the gravity of the topic warranted an uninterrupted conversation. Please bear with us. Remember, if it becomes overwhelming at any point, there is no shame in opting out. And now on to our show, Ride or Die, from Teens to Prosecco Queens. Welcome to Ride or Die, from Teens to Prosecco Queens, the podcast that will make you expand your mind, your views, and hopefully heal the parts of us that need it most. And I am your host, the forever dreamer, Teresa. I'm sitting here today with an extraordinary young woman whom I just recently met and was quite taken by. Have you ever met someone that instantly felt understood you and could quite literally see you? And even though our experiences weren't parallel in nature, they were so close it felt we were instantly a part of a sisterhood, one of survival, one of learning, healing, and growing. Please help me welcome Amparo Vazquez to the show. Amparo is the founder and creator of Astekah Amparo Vazquez. I think I'm saying that right. Yes. Where she aims to help create new leaders from marginalized communities for this growing, changing world, to challenge it and hopefully make it better. Part of the reason I felt so drawn to her story is because of the parallels to mine. As a narc abuse survivor who has suffered from severe PTSD, severe loss of self-worth, and feeling purely broken, to being able to use your voice for the greater good, I understand the draw to want to help others do better on their journeys and hopefully be a small beacon of hope where needed. During our first meeting, I felt like I knew Amparo forever, and her insights, positivity, and glow were infectious. And I felt like I could talk to her for hours. And hopefully this conversation won't be for hours, but if it is, I'm okay with that as well. But we are definitely going to get into the nitty-gritty and not only learn something new, but leave you inspired. Amparo, welcome. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on my show, and please tell our dear listeners a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Teresa. I really appreciate that intro. Hi, everyone. It's very nice to meet you. So I am a survivor of a lot of things, not just of narcissistic abuse as an adult. I'm also a woman of color who grew up in the hood. So I'm a survivor of a lot of forms of systemic oppression, systemic abuse. I grew up around a lot of different forms of violence. So I've always been, from the time that I was very little, someone who was very motivated to protect and help and heal others. So I was about 6 or 7 years old when I told my elementary school teacher that I wanted to find the cure for AIDS, because it was the thing that I saw was having a huge impact on the world. So it's who I've always been. And it's something that was instilled in me from my family. My culture is always, you help other people. You use your resources, you use your talent, you use your skill set, you use your experiences to help other people. So every time that I've come out of a heavy period, I've immediately used it to help other people. I've used my own tools to bring myself up from those experiences, and then imparted those tools and the healing from those experiences to help other people. And that's where I am now, is turning my experiences into help for other people.
And I love that, because a lot of people, and me included at a lot of points in my life, don't necessarily know where to go when you're trying to get pulled out of that period, right? Some people just ignore it altogether and think that they're good. And those patterns emerge. And it's only when you're trying to be self-aware enough do you not only see those patterns, you try to learn from them and heal from them and hopefully grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that with your story, which I found really interesting, you didn't just use your voice, you're using a whole platform to do that and to help others grow. I think that's freaking genius. It's amazing. It really is. Can you tell us a little bit? I mean, it's up to you, of course, what you're comfortable with. Can you tell us a little about your childhood? Because I know that what I will say is, for me and you, we had a lot of issues, some narc abuse when we were children, into relationships as well. And it's just sometimes, again, those patterns emerge, but you don't know that's what you're dealing with.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I can share some information with the footnote that I won't be sharing too much information out of respect for family and certain people that are
You
involved.
got it, of course.
So I grew up with abusive situations inside and outside the home. And it was very much treated as normal.
Yep.
And when I was little, I've always been a very highly sensitive person. So I would say that the way that it affected me might have been a little bit more extreme than it affected someone else who was more used to numbing
Yeah.
themselves. So even on top of that, I will say that my primary coping mechanism in this life has been suppression. So because I've
Mhm.
been a highly sensitive person, like literally my nervous system is wired to feel things more deeply than someone who's not highly sensitive, right?
Yes.
The way that I survived the constant 24/7 at times stream of lack of safety was to like go within, create fantastical worlds inside of my head and just suppress the hell out of everything that I was living.
Yeah.
So growing up, I grew up in the hood. I couldn't go outside of my house at all, like except to go to the grocery store and school. Couldn't go outside. Couldn't wear what I wanted, right? Because if I happened to be outside walking from school to home, anything could be used as an excuse to harass you, to hurt you, to kidnap you, to rape you, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be really, really, really careful about your behavior outside of the home. I had bullies in the classroom from the time that I was 6 to the time that I was like 14, 15, something like that.
Wow.
So a lot of lack of safety in school as well, a lot of bullying, a lot of like cutting me down, making me feel bad, making me feel not smart, all that kind of stuff. And then I had stuff in family as well. And so I grew up around a lot of lack of safety.
Yeah.
And I don't know if have you heard of the Enneagram?
Yes.
Okay. So for
Yes.
anyone that doesn't necessarily know, the Enneagram is a system of thought that is sort of like the Myers-Briggs in that it says you can take a test based on the results of that test. It says this is what your personality type is like,
Hmm.
right? Myers-Briggs, your personality type can change. Like you can be more extroverted and then you can become more introverted. For
Right.
example, Enneagram is something that is sort of speaks to the core of who you are. So, and that doesn't really change, right? So the core of who I am is an 8, which is a protector. I've always been very protective. So even with experiencing so much lack of safety inside the home, outside the home, like everywhere, I was always someone who wanted to protect other people.
Yeah.
And from there, I went off to college. I That was the first time that I really, really, really experienced safety was college, like consistently. Really got a chance to experience what I was like as a human being. Turned out that I wasn't this unhinged person that I felt like
Right.
at times growing up.
Right.
As who you are when you're experiencing lack of safety, especially constant lack of safety, that's a very different person
It
than
is.
who
It's
you
fight or
are.
flight, right? It's survival, pure
Yeah.
survival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like 100%. So it was in college that I started to experience who I actually was and to live life and started to experience dating for the first time. So that's where I'll pause because I've been talking for a long time.
Oh, please. You can listen. I don't want to cut you off. You talk, like I told you, and for lack of a better way to say this, I loved your story because, like I said in the intro as well, it felt so parallel to mine because out of respect, and I've actually spoken of it as well in other episodes. My sister was on 2 episodes with me. We spoke about a lot of things, There are things that we had to heal from or just starting now to heal from our childhood because I
Yeah.
realized I spent so much of my childhood in survival mode, all of it, actually. To be honest with you, I've probably spent the first 40 years of my life. I'm only 41 in survival mode. Now it's more survival, like, how the hell are we going to pay for certain things? Because that's just life for everybody, right? But it's a different kind of survival mode than not
Yeah.
feeling safe and protected.
Yeah.
And part of what
Absolutely.
I related to, especially, was that protector role.
Mm.
I was
Yes.
always the protector. I
Yes.
took the beatings. I made sure my mouth was louder than everybody else's so someone else wouldn't get it, right? I was the one that said, okay, yes, it was me. So then I'd be the one to accept whatever punishment it was so that no one else had to go through what I was going through. You know what I'm saying? And so I felt that. as well. I've always been that protector. And it's very exhausting. It is soulfully exhausting because there's no way to relax in yourself, right? So the fact that you were able to at least do that in college is wonderful, because I don't even remember being aware enough until just recently that all of that is connected, that all of it is connected, that everything that we do is connected. So I find that really inspiring, that when you were in college, even as so young in college, you know, we all have experiences that we feel like, oh, we know who we are. I didn't realize till recently myself that I didn't know who I was. I had a therapist say to me 2 years ago, we have to find out who's Teresa. And I said, I know who I am. She's like, do you? And then I was like, oh shit, I don't. Because I've always been to everybody else what I thought I was supposed to be.
Yes, which is normal in abuse. In
Yeah.
abuse, inside of an abusive situation, you're not allowed to have boundaries and you're not allowed to have an identity unless it serves your abuser specifically, right?
Yeah.
So if you grow up in an abusive home, it's very common for the children to not actually know who they are, because their identities are entirely based upon what makes mom and dad look good, right?
Mm.
And then flow from that to an abusive relationship immediately
Yeah.
following, never get a chance to experience your true self. I was very blessed, very lucky in that I got a chance to experience who I really was in that in between. And so that protector will always be. And it's my protector comes out in the form of like keeping an eye on people for people without them necessarily knowing. Like
Me too. Me too.
yeah.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's almost annoying at times, to be honest. It is, because I
Yeah.
worry when I don't feel like I should.
Yes, yes, 100%. And I'm not sure about, I'm assuming you too. With me, it carried like more than a hint of martyrdom, which like that
Mm.
wasn't something that I released until very recently when it majorly bit me in the ass last year. And I realized that I was willing to martyr myself for others that weren't willing to
Mm.
look out for me in the same way, you know? And that's when I was like, nah, never again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chapter 3 of this life. Let's go.
Yeah. You know, and it takes balls to do that,
Yeah.
because people don't realize setting boundaries take balls, especially when it's for people you care for, when it's for people you love, like family. I had to set boundaries. It took me till I was in my 30s to say, you know what? I love you. I respect you, but you cannot talk to me like that anymore. You cannot,
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore. I'm not your therapist. I'm not the one that you can just, you want to vent. You got a couple minutes to vent. Fine. I've been blessed because when I went through some of the hardest times in my life, I've had people close to me that will just listen to me cry and scream. Right. And I felt guilty about that. And for a long time, I said, but you're always there for people too. Right. So it's kind of like you shouldn't feel guilty for
Yeah.
putting
Yeah.
yourself out there and having the boundaries to say, I can't do this right now, right? I just can't do that. Yeah, it takes balls to do that. It really does. And most of us are raised, especially in the colored communities, that we're not allowed to have boundaries, like you said.
Yes. Yes. Because it's part of abuse. So we can speak to why it takes balls, right?
Hmm.
It's not just because you're actively discouraged, it's because you're often punished,
Yes.
whether it's emotional, physical, psychological punishment. So what ends up happening is your subconscious associates setting boundaries, having a good sense of self, feeling proud about yourself, talking positively about yourself, being a fucking human being
Yeah.
with punishment,
Yeah.
right? Those two get rigged inside of your subconscious. So that what ends up happening is like it ends up merging in with your false sense of self inside of yourself. That's why you come to believe I am this. I am someone that's quiet and can't speak out about blah blah blah. I am your self-identification is so wrapped around what you have been allowed and not allowed to do in this life because of all of the punishment that a lot of us receive when it comes to being people outside of that very limited identity. And that's what abuse is. You feel
Yeah.
good about yourself? Not for long.
That's right.
For long. Oh, you're starting to become successful and starting to become independent? Not for long.
Right.
Unless it serves your abuser because you're a PR tool for them. So it's another thing that I
Oh,
realized after escaping abuse. And I had this like crashing experience with all sorts of repressed memories and insights. And all of a sudden, so much stuff made sense. And my perception of what I'd lived flipped because I had been suppressing the entire time. So it was only being away from the danger that all of my suppressive tactics melted, collapsed, and all things made sense. And then I had all these repressed memories come up and these insights. And I realized, oh shit, I was never a person. I was a thing. I was a PR tool.
yeah.
So, in those things that didn't make sense, like, why is he talking about me publicly like this, positively? But then privately, he's shitting on me and it doesn't make
Mm,
sense. It's because I was a PR tool. Why is he saying that we're
yes.
doing this thing where it seems like we're lovey-dovey publicly, but like just today, this morning, he was yelling at me because I was a PR tool, like
Right.
that's how that is you're not a person, you're a thing that serves the purpose of the abuser. So at home, it was the same thing. It's like, why does this person treat these people better than they treat us? Why
Oh,
does this treat us
yes.
differently in public versus when we're behind closed doors? When
Right.
you start to ask those questions of like, why am I being treated differently in different circumstances? That's a sign that it's possibly abuse because you're a person who genuinely loves you wouldn't change up so much how they treat you according to different circumstances.
You're right.
That's disingenuous. That's manipulative. That's bullshit.
Yeah. That is, you saw my reaction when you said that because it's so visceral for me because that starts when we're kids, right? It's like the don't embarrass me, speak when you're spoken to. And don't get me wrong, this is generational trauma, right? This is coming from generations and generations of you are to sit and be quiet. You are, I like how you said that, a PR tool for me. You are proving that I am this person. I know how to handle my shit, right?
Good.
Right. And then when you get older, as I got older, and I had a lot of little, teenage relationships and stuff before my daughter's father. And I was with him for a very long time we were almost 18 at the time. And a lot of stuff happened there. And at the time, I used to say, yo, this dude switches up a lot. And it started to come out more later as there was more trauma that he was dealing with. But it was a lot of that. It was a lot of that. I used to say we'd be at a party somewhere or just with family. And he was a whole nother person. And then we'd get home and this other person came out. And then I would hear, "Aw, poor so and so, you're so mean to him." I'm so mean to him because I am who I am, but you're seeing an entirely different person. And then it used to, so it's playing that victim, right? It's playing that, oh, because I'm just who I am. I look like I'm being nasty and I'm being abusive when I'm like, who the hell are you? Like, you don't even understand what I'm dealing with in real life, you know? And it's kind of like until they can't separate the two anymore. That's when other people start to see it. It's like when you step back a little bit,
Yeah.
and that happened to me twice.
Yeah.
And the second time, my son's father, it was disguised a little different because he had substance abuse stuff too. So there was that switch that was always just, any substance abuse, you're just a different person anyway, right? But it wasn't about that he was abusive in the home. He had other stuff that he was doing that he shouldn't have been doing. But it was about, I used to watch him be nice to people, talk to them so good. Like they'd be like, "Oh, what a nice man." And then he'd come home and he would either ignore me or he would say stupid stuff or he would treat me like I was a stranger. I mean, like, and I used to be like, "Why?" And I used to call him out, "Why are you nicer to people on the street than you are to the woman who loves you and takes care of you and is the mother of your children?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it
So
isn't until you get to see it and understand it. So when you said that, I was like, oh my God, that was so visceral for me because that's exactly how I feel like I've spent most of my life.
yeah. And that all speaks to intentionality, which like it's so hard to accept that the person that you love so much is intentionally hurting you. That is such a
Oh,
hard thought to accept, especially if you grew up with it in your home. Because as a kid, your entire survival depends on your parental figures, on your
mhm.
family, right? So our brains are wired for survival. It's not wired to be like, I am an imminent emotional, physical,
Right.
psychological beyond danger all the time, right? So it's only when you come out of those situations, a lot of survivors call it coming out of the fog. You come out of the fog and
Mm.
all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, oh my God, I was making excuses because I couldn't accept the fact that this person was hurting me and that they were doing it on purpose. But you look back and you're like, they did this and this and this. That was very calculated. That
Yes.
was strategic. And especially if they do it a lot of times, there's a pattern that shows
Yep.
up. And
Yep.
so then you start to put it all together and you realize, oh, that's right. They were lying to me because that's a thing that people can do. Someone can look you in the face and they can tell that they love you, and it's a
Mm.
bull lie,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
why you have to look at people's actions,
Amen.
their actions and the impact of those actions. And then you make a decision based on that. And then you move on. Like that's a thing that I have now that I did not have before. I have a lot of things now that I didn't have before. It's like much quicker ability to just be like,
Yeah.
and that's gotten progressively better over time. Last year I had so many lessons, harsh lessons about how much more I still had to heal so that I could release things that weren't good for me, so that I could move on, so that I could see beyond like the veils that my brain is inclined to create to keep myself in a certain safe state, that like maybe it's safe temporarily, maybe it's not
Right. Right.
safe in the long term, for example. So I'm still going through the healing process. I'm still, I think it takes a while to heal after like decades
Oh,
of
of
fight.
course. And I actually read that the other day that we're never truly healed.
Yeah.
It's always a work in progress because
Mm.
it's like anything else, one step forward, 10 steps back. Anything could be a trigger that we didn't even realize we have there. You again just said something that triggered me, and I was like, oh my God. And it was about the love thing, right? Because like, how does someone come into your bed, tell me how much they love you, blah, blah, blah. And then when they're out the house, you don't exist.
Yeah.
They're out
Or
there
introvert.
acting like you don't exist and doing stuff like you don't exist. And then you're coming into my house, into my bed, into being my soul, and you're telling me you love me. That's
Yeah.
intentional. That's
Yeah.
intentional lying. It's intentional manipulation, right? And for whatever the case may be, because it could be that it's the same thing with addictions, right? It's the same idea. It's like all of that happens because you are protecting your addiction, whatever that addiction may be, right? And it's about trying to protect that person, right? So for me, when I read this thing about with love, I was reading, I've been learning, let's put it that way. It's a better way to say it. And I'm still learning it. It's going to take me a while to really get it in my head. Love is actions, right?
Yes.
Love really isn't a thing without actions,
Yeah.
and I've been in a situation for over half a year now where it's like it's nice to hear the words, but there's not a lot behind it unless we're together.
Mhm.
And I may not necessarily be looking for, I am still dealing with, like you were saying, you had a lot of lessons last year. Last year and the year before that is when all of this trauma came to fruition, when it all came to light, when it all came to where I was thrown into a depression I've never been in my life, and the PTSD and anxiety, all that kind of stuff, right? Which we can talk about as well. So I see for you the amount of healing you've done, because it takes so much time to say to yourself that someone should and has to prove,
Yeah.
not that they think you're worthy enough, because you need to know that you're worthy enough and you need to cut and let go. And sometimes for me, it takes time because I'm that protector, I'm that warrior, because I feel so deeply, because I'm like, I don't want to let this person go from my life because I'll never hear from them again. And that scares me. Some people, we've had a lot, right? Everybody in their lives have a lot of people that kind of come and go, and sometimes whatever, but there's some people that kind of stick in your soul and you don't know why.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I'm at in that situation. So to be able to see that you're further along ahead, that's a really wonderful place to be in, because survival mode, we know, and I know you can speak on this as well, it affects every aspect of your health. Your brain changes. right? When you have PTSD, when you have narc abuse, nobody would ever believe narc abuse would change the chemistry of your brain, and it does.
It causes brain trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, no idea. The vast majority of the world doesn't know. I thought brain trauma only comes from physical impact.
Yeah.
And I've experienced abuse across the spectrum to one degree or another. The minor category of abuse that I've lived through is physical. And that's because the way that I was abused in both phases was by someone who really wanted to look a certain way in the public. And so they couldn't have someone rolling around with bruises, right? Like that would be a very obvious sign that the public image wasn't the same as the private image. But the extreme amount of emotional and mental abuse, of constant gaslighting and manipulation and tearing me down and that kind of thing, but in very covert ways,
Yeah.
it caused brain trauma. And like to your point, it's 4 years of healing for me. Like I'm so drastically different. At the very beginning, I was screaming a lot because my subconscious was unlocking with repressed memories and repressed insights. And I was realizing that I had lived through a fucking nightmare. And I was realizing that this person that I would have given my life for had a sadistic need to hurt me. And I played it all out. I was like, oh my God, this makes too much sense. It was too fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
And the more that I researched it, the more that it made sense. And I realized how much of myself I had lost. I realized that I had no identity. I realized that I was dealing with brain damage. I realized so much horror all at once that my mind had been trying to protect me from. But then all of a sudden, it just unlocked itself over the course of weeks. It was horrifying at the very beginning. I was dealing with so much trauma that I couldn't make basic decisions. I couldn't make the decision of whether to leave the bed, whether to eat, whether to go and take a walk. I couldn't make basic decisions because I didn't know how to make the decision for what I wanted for myself anymore. My understanding of consent was completely erased. My understanding of wanting completely erased. My understanding of it being okay to have needs completely erased. And so I had to rebuild myself from the fucking ground up in every single sense, including financial. Is this like across the board? And it's just lies everywhere, right? So there's just lies everywhere. It's just lies everywhere. I could go into all of the lies and all of the impact of all of the lies and all of the impact of all the different forms of abuse and all the different ways in which like this really scary thing happened and then the very next day pretended like it didn't happen. Like it was a lot of stuff that happened led to the brain trauma and the severe PTSD and CPTSD. I had both. I've been healing from it. And I've been very intentional about healing the last 4 years, mostly staying away from dating best as I could, like mostly keeping to myself so that I could try to heal. Because I had claustrophobia, I had agoraphobia, I had fear of being around people, I had fear of being alone, I had fear of being too much, being too little. It's like all the stuff that I had the extremes of a lot of the stuff that is normal for humans to experience because we're all being shit on by society in one way or another.
Of course.
It's like I had extremes of a lot of those things that I had to heal from, and I've healed a lot. And I'm really proud of getting back joy that at one point I thought I would never experience again.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, it's just so nice to see yourself in the mirror again and be like, oh yeah, there you are. I remember you.
Yeah.
So good.
I understand that so much because there are days I would look in the mirror and I didn't know who the hell I was. And it's scary because you're just looking at this empty shell and you feel like you've been stripped of every bit of who you are. The first time it happened to me, I was in such fight or flight mode, fight or flight. We'll just leave it at that. And I remember just at that point saying to myself, I gotta get out of this. I gotta figure this out. Right. So my brain was just on that survival at that point. It's like once I made that decision, I had thought about it for years and years and years. And I didn't know how. I thought about ways to do it. I couldn't do it. Right. And to the point that I was like, my daughter was about 7 and I was like, I literally cannot do this to her or to me anymore. And I found a way. It took me 8 months to escape. 8 months. I was living with this person who I hated, who tried to break me down to try to keep me around for who did this for years anyway, is what kept me around for so many years. But that last 8 months, I thought I'm not going to survive this because I'm going to fall back.
Yep.
And I said, look, and this time I was like, I can't fall back. You can't lose more time. I focused on me. I lost 35 pounds. I went to the gym every night. I said, if I don't focus this energy elsewheres, I'm going to black out again. And I was like, and that was somewhere. So I was like, I never wanted to be again. And that's what happens. Your brain, it reacts so differently to different scenarios, because in that time it reacted very differently. The second time around, because it was such a different, he wasn't an abusive person. He was actually very loving with me when he was being, when he was whatever. But then there was the financial abuse, there was emotional abuse, there was, my God, psychological abuse. There was no physical abuse. Actually, it was physical abuse on my part, because when I blacked out a few times, and when I first found out certain things, I was like, I'm gonna kill somebody. There was an angel on my shoulder every time that said, stop, think of your kids. This is not worth it. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But I understand that thing of not being able to put one foot in front of the other. There were days I didn't eat, and I am an emotional eater. So for me, I shove all that shit down. I eat just someone else could be eating and I feel it. I just shove it down. There were days I didn't even eat because I couldn't function from day to day. I missed work. I would be on the phone on a Zoom with my boss in hysterics, my boss.
Yeah.
The most unprofessional thing you could do, but I couldn't string a sentence together. And so to be able to, and then I look back only a year and I'm like, wow, I don't even recognize that woman. So I can imagine in your case being so many years out and saying, I feel like I'm good. You know what I mean? Because the financial piece alone, I'm still struggling at times with certain things, right? Like certain things. Back in the day, I didn't think I could do any of it by myself. And I've been doing it all by myself because we have to come out of it. So to know that, there's so much more that comes out of that healing. You're such an inspiration to me, and people that are able to be on that journey and be really self-aware of that journey.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Sometimes they say though, when you're so good at that journey, then you try to get back out there, you're looking around like, oh, there is too many unhealed people out there.
Well, that's okay. Like, I know society places a lot of pressure, especially on women, to couple up right away and to go according to a certain timeline. No, like, yes, I still want love, or now again, I want love. I want certain things, but I'm never gonna, and sort of knock on wood, but like, I'm very committed to my healing, So even though I hesitate because I've been through the experience many times where there were things in my subconscious that I didn't know about that then ended up interfering with my conscious intention of well-being, right? But every time that I've confronted a part of my subconscious that was unintentionally hurting me, I've healed that part of myself. So even if I trip up again, I have full faith that I'm going to be okay because I'm going to heal another part of myself and I'm going to emerge even healthier and even stronger. And that's something that is so potentially very beautiful on the path of healing. Is that as you keep healing, as you keep sort of healing all these wounds and getting to the other side of the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, is you get back more strength, you get more power, you get back more joy, you get back more of yourself. And as far as I can tell, there's no end in sight for that, which is really beautiful.
I love that because we just evolve, right? And with every situation brings you something else that you can learn from, and knock on wood, that we, and I would say before, everything is in God's timing, you know what I mean? And sometimes we're very impatient. I know I am, right? I know it's in God's timing. I was raised that way. I have faith that's in my soul. And I still go, Okay, but don't you think, don't you think it's about time, you know? But he's like, nah, you got stuff to learn. You know what I mean? So, Amparo, can you tell me, for you, being on this journey as long as you have, what are some of the tools when you feel yourself being triggered or you feel a repression come up, a memory or something that makes you feel like you went 10 steps back? What are some of your tools that you could share with us that have helped you along this journey?
Yeah, good question. So that was an incremental process for me because something else that you experience in abuse is anytime you're doing something that makes you feel good, they start to interfere with it, they sabotage
Mm,
it. So your subconscious associates that thing with not feeling good, so you start to not do those things. So
yes.
prior to in that in between when I got to experience who I actually was, I was meditating all the time, I was getting out in nature all the time, like I was living a very healthy lifestyle. And by the end of it, I was just very, not just broken, but unable to have access to the tools that would have helped me to navigate some of that stuff in
Mm,
a more smoother process. So I had to get a lot of these things back. Firstly, spending a lot of time reflecting and giving myself time to reacquaint myself with myself
okay.
and rebuild a feeling of safety with myself because I didn't feel safe anywhere in
Yeah.
existence. I didn't feel safe anywhere. I didn't trust myself because I had led myself to the slaughter, right?
Not
So
to cut you off, but do you know I have said the same exact thing just even recently. I don't trust myself.
yeah,
That's,
that's
you're
you
making
have
me
to,
feel it, girl, because I'm telling you,
yeah,
I'm the same way. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so you have to rebuild your trust in yourself and your feeling of safety within yourself and then go from there. So that's how it was. It was my intention was to be good here and then extend outward. And it included a lot of reflection. It included a lot of moments of processing what I had gone through. And then eventually it included things like meditation. It included things like breath work, which was something else
Mm,
that I got back. And actually, I do have to say, having had the experience of doing breath work prior to escaping saved my life afterwards. Because what breath work taught me was that when trauma is on the surface, how to let it go when it's on the surface. I had many experiences throughout this entire journey in which I can tell that my body is no longer suppressing as much like
right.
trauma and it's on the surface and I have to let it go. And so in my more balanced moments, or not even balanced, like as best as I could in that moment, have consistently more and more and more so, like for the most part, consciously released it, consciously let it go, consciously let it out of my body through breathing or through crying or through shaking or through constriction or something.
Okay.
And when I couldn't, because it was too much and my suppressive tendencies were too they were too rigid, it caused me to break, it caused me to crack open. There were so many times on this journey in which I thought I was going to lose my damn mind because of
Yeah.
my own suppressive tactics that I you can't control it.
Yeah. No, yeah. Yeah, I understand completely.
Yeah. So rebuilding myself, increasingly expanding my feeling of safety, vetting every single person in my life over and over and over again
Mm,
that they were okay. A lot of exposure therapy. I did a lot of self
really?
exposure therapy. Yeah, a lot of it. So, for example, I didn't feel safe around anyone anymore at all, period. And it included like being around groups of people. It included around being around strangers because in my mind, I'm like, fuck, everyone's a goddamn threat. Like, I don't know who is actually going to be a sadistic sociopathic asshole who gets pleasure off of tearing me down while smiling at me and telling me that they love me,
Oh my
right?
God, I understand that so much. That's,
Yeah,
yeah, it's hard to
yeah,
not feel that way. That is a huge trauma response because I still feel that at times.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what I did was I very intentionally and strategically started exposing myself more and more and more to people that I vetted to make sure that I was safe enough to be around them to certain degrees. So at first it included at the time close friends that I vetted and I re-vetted and I was like, I think I'm safe enough to be around you. I think that you're schooled enough on trauma for me to be around you in these ways. And then eventually it included a small group of coworkers, and then it included later on a larger group of coworkers. And in that latter part of my exposure therapy, I would travel each way 2 hours to go to an office, not to work from the office because I cared about being at the office, but no, it was to expose myself to being around people so that I could heal. No one knew that I was doing this.
Of
So everyone was
course.
like, "You have a long time to go to the office." And I was like, yeah, because I'm so committed to my own healing. Like, if something matters to me, I'm gonna do it. And 2 hours is 2 hours, is fine, you know? So
No.
a lot of exposure therapy, listening to, oh man, I studied the hell out of narcissism, covert narcissism, especially because that's what I lived through. I studied the
Mm.
hell out of covert narcissism. I studied the hell out of the impact. I studied the hell out of PTSD, so that I could understand what the hell I was going through, why I had consistent daily emotional flashbacks and adrenaline surges and like uncontrollable feelings of fear just existing at night, because most of the abuse that I lived through, most of the mental, emotional, verbal, and sexual abuse that I lived through was at night. So my subconscious had come to associate nighttime,
With danger.
bedroom, beds with danger.
Mm.
So I had to learn, it took me years, teach my nervous system that I was safe existing at night. And it was, again, it was just such a like step by step. This is the next thing I have to do, the next thing that I have to do, the next thing that I have to do. Oh, I don't know what it feels like to feel good about myself anymore. Let me buy these cards that have these positive affirmations so I can look at them every day. Oh, I don't feel good about myself. I don't feel that I'm attractive. Okay, what can I do to make myself feel attractive? What did I used to do in that in between that made me feel good about myself? Okay, I would wear this type of clothes because it made me feel good. It represented my identity. Okay, I'm gonna do that. Okay, you know what? I think I want to take a walk, but like take a walk with my shoulders upright. And so I
Mm.
started to experiment with like just walking as if I owned the place and walking around like a badass. And then I started to do things like, okay, I'm noticing that I'm getting out of people's way all the time, and people don't get out of my way. And I don't
Oh,
like that. I don't think to be the one to get out of people's way. Fuck that. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to force myself to do this, even though it's extremely uncomfortable. Don't move.
let them
Keep
walk
walking.
right into you. That's
Yes.
it. Yep.
And
Yep.
it was so uncomfortable at first. Each time you do any of this stuff, it's gonna feel so uncomfortable because you associate with danger. It's
Yeah.
not even just that you're not used to it, it's that you associate it with danger. You
Yes.
associate confidence with danger. You associate feeling good with danger. You associate healing,
Yeah.
healing with danger.
Because you spent
So
your whole time in that protective bubble of yourself, that anything
yeah,
that puts you out there is dangerous. It's just that everything is dangerous because you're just so used to keeping yourself protected and saying,
yeah,
this is who I am, but it's not who you are. That's
yeah.
exactly what it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's it's also because of how much they punish you. Because anytime that you're doing well and it's not for the purpose of making them look good, you get
Mm.
punished. They start an argument the day before your big interview around something.
Yes.
They criticize you about something that means well or that makes you feel better about yourself, or they try to plug in like little seeds of doubt about your ability to do X, Y, and Z, or they're like, hey, this friend of yours does this and this and this, and you're like, do they? Wait, do they? Like, they really like to get under your skin and
Yes.
get conscious. And when you trust someone, they have easier access to your subconscious. So
Right.
your abuser is the most dangerous person on the planet for you until you've healed.
Yeah. Every holiday gets ruined.
Yeah.
Every birthday party for your kids gets ruined. It's every trip you want to take gets ruined. Anytime you do something without them, it's ruined. It never fails what it is. So I remember always thinking weeks and months in advance of something I was going to do, going, I don't even know if I want to do it because I'm
Yeah.
never going to hear the end of it.
Yeah.
I'm never not going to feel like shit for not doing something for myself or for doing something for myself, right? The one time I do something and it's true. There are days that's when you just give in and you're
Yeah.
like, they beat you down so much that you just give in, and it's kind of like, what's the point anymore? What's the point of trying anymore? And you lose whatever sense of self you think that you have. I'm a very loud person. We talked about it, not all the time, but when it's necessary, right? I'm boisterous, I'm opinionated, but a lot of the time I'll sit and say nothing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I'm also introspective. When I was a kid, I went through bullying too, right? But I was being bullied some over here, and yet I'm protecting people and getting into fights over here. You know what I'm saying? On this side. So it's like, and it wasn't fights for me necessarily. It's like, oh, you were fucking with my little sister. This is how we're dealing with this, right? Or all the neighborhood kids, someone's messing with you, I'm the one dealing with it, right? That kind of thing. And it was always that back and forth that just I never knew who I was, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that you kind of say that I've also been saying over this. So when you say that the tool about finding yourself and self-care and all those kind of things, finding things that make you feel confident. I used to say the same thing. What did I used to do? I used to work out. I gained 30 pounds in
Yeah.
2 years because of all of this. I used to exercise like a fiend. I was always in the gym. That was who I was my whole life. Some 16, I was in the gym. I lost all of that. I was like, what makes you feel like you? Right? And go get your nails done. You sacrificed because we got like the same color, girl, too. That's so funny. But like, it was the idea of like, you've done this stuff your whole life, but you stopped doing this stuff because you were sacrificing for somebody else's healing, and they're not giving you anything back.
Yeah.
So you have to take for you. So I love that about sometimes you just have to take for you
Yeah.
because no one there's very rare someone's going to give it to you. It's very rare someone's going to say, listen, let's put it this way. Maybe it's not rare. Maybe I just haven't found it yet. The person that says, go take care of yourself, do for you. And I'm here to be that
Yeah.
strength you need to.
I would actually say that it's a sign of someone who is deserving of being in my life if they encourage me to
Mm.
myself. If they
Oh,
encourage me to love myself, then you can be in my life, you know? And everything that you're saying makes so much sense. Like to sort of give you two sentences of how I healed is I was fucking stubborn
mm.
about reminding myself of who I used to be and what I used to love.
Wow.
That's what it was. And I kept doing the next little thing and the next little thing. And I was very intentional. I could tell that I had no identity. I could tell that I'd been brainwashed, which is fucking terrifying.
It is
I
terrifying. Yeah.
and because it was so covert what I lived through, my abuser loved to convince me that I was the abuser. And he spent years trying to convince me that I was the abuser until the very end, in which he broke me and convinced me that I was the angry monster. And I thought we were still having like a mutual conversation. And all of a sudden, he got really giddy. And I was like, even not knowing that I was being abused, I was like, I'm broken right now. And this person is giddy. I don't understand what's going on. And it was like, it was such an incredibly important moment of, huh. And that moment was only made possible because I think it was the day before I had, in a moment of desperation, sought help from relationship coaching. And because, again, from my vantage point, I was a woman who was with her soulmate, whose
Mm.
connection was being destroyed,
Yep.
right? That
Yep.
was my understanding at the time. And also, it's a lot of the responsibility is on me, was what I thought, right? So in my moment of desperation, sought relationship counseling, asked my abuser if he would do it with me. But no. So I talked to a relationship coach on my own because my abuser refused to have a conversation with professional help at that point, even though we had done other professional joint support that he always weaponized against me, right? But I sought it on my own. And this relationship coach, I was like distraught. I was talking with him, which I had warned him about ahead of time. And he started asking me questions about what was going on between us. And then I casually slipped in this moment of abuse, of verbal abuse that I didn't know anymore was a big deal because the way that my abuser would treat like abuse was as no big deal.
Right.
So he would do something that made me feel scared for my life. And then the next day we would go see his family. And then he would tell me something like, oh, I told my brother and blah, blah, blah. But the way that his brother would respond, it was like afterwards I realized, no, he never told his brother. His brother would have responded very differently if his brother knew that the day before going to a theater outing, I feared for my life because this person was trying to start a fight, but trying to get me to start a fight so he could say that it was me starting a fight, to the point of grabbing my wrist and staring at me like if he had no soul or if I had no soul, right? So I slipped it in, and this relationship coach was like, oh, have you ever experienced anything like that before? And I was like, yeah, this other time, he yelled at me in the car, blah, 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 blah. And after telling him the things that I did know about that I could remember, he paused and he was like, you know, I have some bad news for you. I can't help you with this, because if I help you with this, it'll mean you going back to him, and that'll mean harm to you. And that was the first time that I was like, oh my God, like someone got through to me. Other people had tried to get
Wow.
to tell me that I was living through something that was harming me. And I couldn't, I pushed it all away because I couldn't accept that I
Yeah.
was being harmed by this person that I had loved so much, right?
Yeah.
And that moment in time then set up the domino effect for the next day when my abuser finally broke me, convinced me that I was an angry monster for the first time to observe and watch. And I saw this person gleeful about breaking me. And even still, like, I didn't put everything together until I escaped, because it was constant manipulation, right?
Yeah.
Constant manipulation. Even as I share all of this and I feel the reactivation inside of my body, I'm very grateful that I survived this,
Yeah.
because it was a very, very, very rough experience.
I agree. Yeah.
I no longer was myself. I was a shell of myself.
Yeah.
I was losing my life. People set out to rescue me because they could tell that I was dying, and they could tell that I was being abused, even though I couldn't tell. So
Mm.
I escaped because I was rescued. And even the day of being rescued, because my abuser was so covert, went with me to the airport, ostensibly to help me. Again, my perspective at the time, I am really scared. I seem to have pissed off my abuser, even though he was okay with my leaving before. But day
Right.
of, I'm like, this is really uncomfortable, really tense. And I feel guilty and ashamed and
Mhm.
doing something. And then at the airport, he tries to read a book with me that I had spent months begging him if we could read together. Just happens to have this book to read together. Someone came to rescue me, so I knew that I couldn't stay behind. Like, I needed to meet this person. By the way, I had had foot surgery recently, so I was hobbling because I had a literal hole in my foot.
Oh my
So
goodness.
this person was, what I realized afterwards, was trying to delay, and so he also tried starting a fight with me. This time it didn't work, because I was like, what the fuck is this? He also tried pitting me against the people who were rescuing me, saying that they didn't like him. And I was like, this is coming out of nowhere. Why do you say that they don't like you? Like, they're coming to rescue me because I didn't even, obviously didn't know that I was being rescued, but I was
Right.
like, they're coming to help me because my connection is falling apart. And I'm so broken for the reasons that were very different than what I thought they were, that I can't fly on my own anymore. And I had to fly cross country. So it was such a dramatic experience
Yeah.
that I know that the way that he could tell it would be very different than how it actually played out.
Of
Because that
course.
story is, I went with her to the airport, I helped her, and end of story. No, I was fucking scared. I had a hole in my foot. You kept delaying me. You tried to start a fight. I barely made it to my gate, catch my plane, and I didn't know, like, I had such a short period of time to be rescued as far as I knew. Like, it was, that's how it was. Like, that's how abuse is, especially covert abuse. It's
Yeah.
like, what is actually happening is violent. It's
Yes.
violent, but you're not
Yeah.
allowed to understand that. And like, whether it's emotional violence or mental violence or physical violence, it's all violence.
Yeah.
It's all abuse,
It is
right?
all abuse. Amen. Yeah.
And it all has the impact on us that is like, it takes time to heal. So going back to the idea of like emotional mental abuse causes brain damage that like most people don't understand because it's abuse.
It's abuse. Yeah.
Abuse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it has an impact on your nervous system. It has an impact on your brain. It has an impact on your subconscious.
Yeah.
And that impact is not good. And it doesn't matter whether someone punched you in the head or not, which is also fucking awful. Like abuse is abuse is abuse.
Yeah.
And it all needs healing and you need protection from all of it. And it also doesn't matter whether it's your significant other or it's your teacher or it's your boss or it's a
Yeah.
legal system. Like abuse is abuse is abuse.
It is. And I think about what you're saying, and it's making me reflect on things that I haven't thought about in a while. Certain aspects of the abuse that I went through, because it's true when you're in it at the time, you're thinking, I'm young, I just maybe don't know. And when you're raised seeing certain relationships as well, you kind of think it's normal, right? If you don't have a good foundation of what a good relationship is, or at least one, and I don't know if you might have, I did not, right? Then you just assume, yeah, shit is hard, right? Like this is how normal people are, right? Because, we are lovey-dovey. We have our moments when we love each other, right?
Mhm.
And it's all good, right? When we're together, oh, we're laughing today. We're good. We're having a good time. But it's like a switch that just flips like instantly. And you're like, holy shit, we were just having a good time, right? Like, and it makes no sense. So it does. It messes with your brain chemistry. I want to preface this piece with the next question I'm going to ask you, but for me, I mean, I just told you that I had went to, and I'm not going to get into a lot of detail here because maybe I'll save it for another episode. That might be fun actually. But I had just went, like I said, to a medium, and some people like, like to laugh about shit like that. But I wholeheartedly believe in those things. I believe in spiritual worlds. I know that we have our spirit guides, everybody, and our angels around us. I know that for a fact. And I had mentioned to you, I had to need some clarity on some stuff I had been questioning about myself for a while, and some messages that I knew were coming through, but they were too jumbled. And to be honest with you, that third eye scares me. I don't really want to open that up, to be honest with you. I'm like, you know, and she called me out on so much stuff that was who I was, like to the core. And she said to me things like, you eat to suppress things. And I mean, within 10 minutes, I was bawling because she was telling me things that to the core of who I was. And it made me think afterwards, that is who I have been accustomed to being, but is that really who I am? Or was that who I was formed into because I had no choice? Right.
Yeah.
I remember so many times in my first marriage. My audience here knows I've been married twice, that the transformational moment where I really woke up and knew, there was two of them actually, but they were one right after the other, where I was like, I'm moving out of this bed. I'm going to stay with my daughter in the room and I'm getting the hell out of here, no matter how long it takes. And one of them, I can still play it back in my head. And I go, I can't believe that even happened. And it's kind of along the lines of yours, where someone else wakes you up because you're in this weird days where you make excuses, where you say, this is not as bad as I think it is, or, whatever the case may be. And, oh, we're a family. We have this kid. We've been together since we're teenagers, the whole nine. And I'm doing the fucking couples therapy, right? And we're sitting in this therapist's office, this older white lady who I wasn't crazy about to begin with, but I was like, something's got to wake this dude up. He's going to lose his family, right? Like, whatever. And he looked dead at the therapist and told a bold-faced lie about me sitting right there. Said, oh, she went and did this and she had this. I looked at him. I said, what the f- are you talking about? I'm sitting right here. He told a bold-faced lie. And when I called him out on it, the therapist looked at me and she dead ass went like this to me. And as soon as she made that face to me, as soon as she looked at me with that raised eyebrow, it was like a jolt woke me up and said, do you see what the hell is going on here? Dude has lost his goddamn mind. He's gone. You need to get the hell out of there. And for me, that was
Yeah.
just one, that was like the transformation. I was like, you can't deal with this, When I went to this medium and she said to me, she said, you knew it was a mistake instantly after you got married. And I said, I knew before.
Mm.
My body was screaming at me for years. Something was going on. So when we say that anxiety and PTSD and all that trauma physically impacts you, not only did I gain weight because I was just horrifically shoving shit down. There were days, almost a week, I didn't eat at all. So I was up and down a weight consistently. I was sick in my stomach. My body was so stiff. I was in the chiropractor. I thought I was dying. I had mammograms done. I had a pinched nerve in my neck. My body was stiff. My back was hurting all the time. My sciatica. I had
Yeah.
constant headaches. I couldn't sleep. You feel like you're dying. Your body and all my blood work reflected it. My cholesterol was high. My blood pressure was high. I was in diabetes. Shit I had never had before.
Yeah.
Your physics, so it doesn't matter if you have those physical, like the bruises on you, because your body keeps the score. It holds on to that shit.
Yeah.
And I say that because for you, was that particular trip to the counselor, let's say, was that the one transformational thing that really got it for you? Or was there any other times that kind of woke you up, but you went, maybe not?
Yeah, good question. I was really resistant to accepting the possibility that this person that I loved so much was hurting me. So a lot of people did try to get through to me. I had a therapist that I saw on my own who she did not like how I was treated, and she let me know. And I felt really uncomfortable receiving this from her. So even though I had a really good experience with her, I stopped going to her shortly after this because I felt like I was betraying my abuser. It's how they treat you, it's how they train you.
Yeah,
You're betraying them if you talk about their shitty behavior to other people,
yeah,
right? And I will note that that same therapist became my therapist again after I escaped, and she was instrumental to my healing again because I didn't know who to
wonderful.
trust. I was like, this person told me at that point that she didn't like how she treated me. I can trust her, or how he treated me. Like I can trust her.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
we also had a couple of couples therapists he tried to weaponize both against me. It didn't work.
Mm,
Because even though he did some of the stuff that you talked about, like bold place to lie, like, and it's all gaslighting, right? And it all would catch me off guard. Like, why didn't you tell me this before? And also, that's literally, I have evidence on my phone that what you're saying is a lie. Do you want me to go get my phone? Like, this is so weird. But yeah, one of the therapists, there was a certain point in which she was caught off guard by the amount of money that he owed me at that point. I think even at that point, it was like almost $10,000, something like that. I tallied it near the end of my experience and it was upwards of 20,000. And that was a low number because that was
mm.
just what I could remember of all the rent that I paid and he would eat my food all the time and then claim that he didn't eat my food. And then surprisingly, miraculously, after I escaped, I had so much more money for food and food itself. And
Isn't it
he
crazy? I know.
claiming that he wasn't. So there was a certain point in which I told her how much he owed me. And it caught her off guard. She's like, what? Like, because he presented as a very caring person or like a normal person,
Of
right?
course.
She stopped and she looked at me and she was like, what's your breaking point? Like, at what point is this too much? And it caught me off guard. And I was like, I don't know if he cheats on me. Like, that was my response.
And was that one of the main reasons that it helped wake you up from this trance?
Like, other potential reasons, right?
Right.
So
Right.
he was trying to have his cake and eat it too, of like,
Mm,
move on, have it somehow look like it's my decision, but also it's his fault and he feels sorry about it. But he's giving a different version of that story to different people. And when I ask him about it, he says that it's because he doesn't want to make enemies. And when I ask him, does that mean that it's not genuine? He gets angry at me. Like, it was such a twisted ending, which is why it became so obvious, was because it was so twisted. And it was like, he just became really obvious of like treating me really coldly when people weren't around. And then when a friend came around, he was suddenly like the world's best partner and like providing me with tea and a blanket and stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is who you used to be. Like, why are you this person all of a sudden? Oh, wait, my friend is here. So going back to some of the stuff that you've said, there the reason why there's so many similarities between our stories is because all narcissistic abusers, they all have very predictable goals, tools, people that they look to target, characteristics and of themselves. They're cookie cutters of each other. So once you
Great
start
way to put it.
one of the things I realized in coming out of it and having all these repressed memories come out and then putting it all together, I was like, oh, he was giving me different versions of different stories about different people so that I would respond a specific way to them. Oh shit, that's what he did to me, like giving different versions of stories about me to others. That's why this person responded to me in this way, and this other person responded to me in this way, and it never made sense. And they were really rude to me for no reason. And oh wow, okay, yeah, I get it. And it was so horrifying at first. Because again, it speaks to intentionality. It speaks to strategy. It speaks to like this person being very calculated in playing things out so that the story is he's a good person.
Right. Right. That's exactly what it is. It's how do I project that this other person, and it stems when I was reading, when I was really noticing the second time around. The first time around, I was like, oh yeah, dude's a narcissist. But that wasn't until way after. That wasn't until way after when I left that I put that term to what it was, right? Like it was way after. And then I look at this the second and I go, oh shit, there was the love bombing.
Yes.
There was and not and the first one too, but we were kids, so really I have trouble with that one, right? That those tendencies came out later, but the second time, that love bombing, which I thought, oh my God, no one's ever treated me so amazing. No one's ever, like we fell in love so quickly. It was always, I don't even remember how I fell in love with you because it just happened without me realizing it, and not that I felt in any way that he was a bad person. I never did.
Yeah.
And he was always amazing with my daughter. My daughter and him love each other. That's who she considers really, like the man who raised her. And he wasn't like that with her. But it was the idea that hindsight, I always say, is 2020, right? You look back and you go, oh my God, that was a clear red flag. That was Narc 101. And a lot of addiction, it's sex addiction, alcoholism, drugs, all of that also is tied into that narc, that narc. Not everyone has that, but sex addiction is a huge one because they need that constant validation. That's why they have that constant supply. You know what I mean? Like, and financial abuse is a huge one with narc abuse because it's like, oh, come on, we're together. We're in this together. I'm not going anywhere, right? Like we're gonna pay this off together. We're gonna do this together. But what happens when the narc isn't around anymore? Now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? But here's my thought process now that I'm learning more about this. I can handle that. It's hard in the time you can't see that light. And even though it's still there, it still lingers. There's still issues. There's still things that I'm like, now I look at it and I go, you're good though. It's gonna be fine. Like your goals, some of your stuff changed, but it's better than being stuck now in a situation where you can't be protected anymore or you can't feel protected anymore, Hearing you, I'm just like, you know how lonely it can be
Mm.
in a lot of ways, right? When you're in those positions, like I said, I was blessed to have people I could cry to and be upset to, but unless someone has experienced it, it's an extremely lonely place to be, right? Like it's just, you just can't fathom that this is happening to you. And afterwards, you forget how much you're still grieving this person that you don't even like anymore.
Mhm.
You know, you have to grieve that whole, like you said, I'll say relationship, quote unquote, because you realize that was that really a relationship? I used to ask him questions. How do I know any of it was real?
Yeah, it's not.
No.
But then that's such a hard thing to accept. But
Yeah.
I I had the like awful benefit to like put the two together of finding out a lot in a very short period of time. And so I found the term codependent, or I refound the term codependent before I escaped. And I realized, oh shit, I'm codependent. And
Yeah.
then I found the work of a person who did a book called The Human Magnet Syndrome that said if you're a codependent, you very likely attracted a narcissist. And I was like, this term, narcissist, I've only heard it in the context of someone who like has a arrogant sense of self. But what is this? Sure to look into it. And oh shit, a lot of it lined up. And then I found out
Mm.
about covert narcissism. Oh shit, everything lined up. So it's like all sorts of stuff made sense very quickly in a short period of time. And so I realized in a very short period of time, it was never real. I was a PR tool from the very beginning.
Mm.
He didn't love me. I would have died for this person. I
Yes.
was addicted to this person.
Oh, yes.
High and low at some point of like lovey-dovey, and then all of a sudden it switches. That high and low that gets created from abuse literally causes you to become addicted to them, and it is potentially as strong as meth.
Wow.
Yes. Are there treatment centers to help you cope with an addiction to a person? No. So I went through withdrawal,
You go through
vomiting,
withdrawal. Yes.
shaking, fever,
Yes.
withdrawal, because I realized all in one go I was abused by this person, destroyed my inside. I'm addicted to them. I now have a really bad state of mental health. And this person that I grew up with is also an abuser. Fuck. I have to go cold turkey, no contact
Yeah.
with my abuser. A lot of people connected to my abuser because I read all these other stories. I did so much research. That's another thing that saved me is that I do my damn research.
Yeah.
Story after story after story of people saying, I really wanted to be nice to this person, so let them have some level of contact to me or their family, and now he's back in my life 3 months later, and then 7 months later, I feel destroyed again. I was not going to do that to myself because I
No.
Turkey. I'm going to, even though I was so brainwashed that I couldn't hold on to the idea that I had been abused for very long or that this
Yeah.
person was a narcissist for very long, despite the mountain of evidence. So I
Yeah.
literally had to change this person's name in my phone from his name to an acronym dash, just a reminder that he's a narcissist, even though it's hard for you to see right now. So that anytime I would
Um,
open up my phone and happen to see his name, it would be a reminder right there. He's a narcissist. Remember, he's a narcissist. Remember, he's a narcissist. So I went cold turkey, had the worst fucking night of my life when I went cold turkey because all of a sudden the addiction came out
yeah.
in full force
Yeah.
and it was awful. And trigger warning, I have historically not had suicidal ideation. I went through a very small period of it in junior high because of the amount of abuse that I was experiencing from River. I've experienced a lot of suicidal ideation because of abuse as an adult and having to heal from it because it is fucking awful. And it was rough. And then I went through a withdrawal experience, which I just so happened to read that article. I
Right.
think it was like the night that I went virtually cold turkey with everyone is I found an article that told me that it was a form of addiction, that it was as strong potentially as meth. And I was like, motherfucker, here
Yeah.
I go.
That's crazy.
Here I go. And then I went through withdrawal and all this other stuff coming up from my subconscious. It was rough.
Yeah.
It
It
was
really
rough.
is. It's so hard for someone who's never really been in that situation. Breakups from a relationship are hard, right? You feel that physical release just from a regular breakup. But yes, it is exactly that. It's an addiction. It's that dopamine kick every time they breadcrumb you, every time they give you a little something that makes you think, oh shit, look, they do love me. They do care about me. I'm number one in their world. When reality is they're number one in my world.
Mhm.
I will do anything for this person. And I'm thinking they're going to do the same for me.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's why I felt like it was like this sisterhood, not one that we necessarily want to be a part of, right? Because that's not one that we want to, but it's the fact that we're able to now label it and know what the difference is.
Yeah.
So I want to switch gears with you a little bit, if you're cool with that. I want you to tell me about Azteca, if I'm saying that correctly. And I say it as BIPOC CX because to me it's almost like customer service, but but I'm like, but I'm gonna let you explain that if you want to tell us about your brand and what you do and all about it.
Yes, thank you. And Azteca is very much my baby. That is what I'm placing all of my attention on, because that is the thing that it's been inside of me to build for like a decade, actually. So I've been so passionate about helping people to feel good and better about themselves from elementary school, I would say. Like I historically have been, as a friend, someone who will shower people with love and affection and affirmations and validation because I like people to feel good. I like to support people's feeling good, not become a source of it, but like be a supporter of their feeling good.
Yeah.
And so that in combination with everything that I survived and the fact that to my extreme horror, when it came out of this, I was like, oh my God, there's no actual support. How the fuck do I heal? Like, where do I go to heal?
Yeah.
And it's there in pockets, but when you're broken, when you're fresh out of this, like it can be really hard to figure out how to find those forms of support, right?
Yeah.
So I realized there's so much stuff that I want to build out over the course of this life because this is unacceptable. Like there's so much stuff right now that exists in reality that is completely unacceptable, including
Right.
how so many of our systems abuse us in very similar ways as what an individual abuser does to their primary target. The same tactics of the breadcrumbing and the gaslighting and the future faking and the invalidation, like same tactics, right? So
Yes.
Azteca is part of this larger vision of what it is that I want to build. I want people to feel human again. I want them to feel joyful again. I want them to feel worthy again. I want them to feel like fucking badasses again.
I
These are all
love
the
that.
things that I had to get back within myself because it gets broken. It gets broken by abusers.
Mm.
It gets broken by oppression. It gets broken by
Depression.
all this shit,
Yes.
right? And so here's the thing. I want to do that for the thing itself. So, and I'll tell you about like the larger picture of the services and everything else that I created. I want to do it for the thing itself, but then I also want to do it because it has a huge impact across the world, right? I think I mentioned it like earlier in our conversation, is that when someone feels worthy, just because they're worthy, not because of they're worthy because of what they have or the thing that they do
Right.
or like being of utility to other people, like I'm just in love with myself because I'm in love with myself.
Oh,
No
I
longer
love that
accept,
so much, girl. So
yes,
much.
no longer accept shitty friends, one-sided friendships, abusive friendships, toxic friendships, people they make fun of them and then pass it off as a joke. None of that shit flies increasingly, right? And I'm going through the process of shedding even layers of that stuff. That person feels more like they can step into their purpose, whether that purpose is I want to have my own family and that's my purpose. Or that purpose is I want to lead a nonprofit organization and that's my purpose. Or I want to be a speaker and that's my purpose. Or I want to help other people do this other amazing thing and that's my purpose. A worthy person naturally becomes more creative, more free. They start to do all sorts of stuff in the world. And it's not even just the stuff that they do, it's what they're radiating, right? So I can tell you that this person right here that you're seeing is so different from the
Mhm.
person that you would have seen 5 years ago. I've seen videos of myself from the tail end of my experience or from when I was in abuse because I was still a creator, right? And you can see how broken I am. You can see the cry for help, and you see someone like that, and you feel bad, right?
Yeah.
You feel like you feel sad. You see
Yeah.
someone alive who feels worthy, who feels good, who feels at peace. You're going to feel at peace within yourself.
Yeah. It's that radiation. It's that
Yeah.
real radiation, that energy radiation that like it's palpable,
Yes.
purely
Yes.
palpable. You're right. Yeah.
So Astekah came from all of this, that I want people to reclaim those within themselves, to come out of hardship
Mm,
and go through the process of validation. That's where we start. We start with a lot of validation. This is why you don't feel worthy anymore. The individual factors, the systemic factors. And then I want to help you to remember who the fuck you are.
mm,
So we revisit who your true self is. And your true self emerges in moments of safety. And despite all the shit that we've been through, there are very often at least moments where we've gotten a chance to experience our true selves because we've been safe.
mm.
And then we get to carry that forward and say, okay, what is a new life that you want to build then on top of the foundation of your true self? Let's work towards that. And then it's let's break these cycles. Let's
Yeah.
break these generational patterns, these societal patterns.
Yeah.
Because this shit is going on to something that you said earlier for a long fucking time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I have coaching, I have group coaching, I have meditations, I have workbooks. Like it's a very rapidly growing business because this has been a long time coming. And
Right.
because it's a like a coming to of a lot of stuff that I've done in the past. I've done meditations in the past. That's something that
It's your tools coming to fruition.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your goal, your tools, your safety, your protection, your education, your all of it coming into fruition in a way that you are using those tools to help others.
Yes, exactly. And so the group program, I just launched it. And it's a group program that it's like the latest vision for a group that I wanted to launch 5 years ago. And I have named it I Am Worthy. That's the name of the program. So that anytime someone refers to the program, they're saying something positive about themselves. I am worthy.
That's so much, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
so amazing. I'm all about those affirmations, you know, and that's beautiful. Yeah.
So that's it. That's the vision. The vision is I want to help people heal. I want them to feel alive again. I want them to feel connected back to their true essence and back to their true joyful badass worthy selves because that's who we all are. That's who we are in safety. So that's who we actually are.
Who you're meant to
And then
be.
yeah,
That's it. Who you're
who
meant
you
to
are
be.
outside of oppression, who you are outside of hardship, who you are outside of abuse.
So then, okay, so a couple different things actually that I'm thinking about here. Is it solely you?
Yeah, for
Wow.
now.
For now, of course. Listen, of course, everything I say the same thing. I say yet. It just means, right? We actually talked about it last time. It's just yet. We're just waiting for that yet. That's all that it is, right? Because I think things that we do are labors of love because like you say that's your baby. I'm kind of like this is my baby, you know, you put it out there, you have a vision and you don't just hope for the best, you're working for the best. You're saying, I know that this is going to help somebody. And I think that that is the best way to continue moving through it is saying this is going to help someone. And this is my voice is, I am worthy. My voice is worthy. Now, the BIPOC CX part of it is that, well, explain what BIPOC is for people who don't know. I'll let you do that.
Yeah, yeah. BIPOC or BIPOC 6?
Both, either or both, whatever you want to do.
So BIPOC is Black Indigenous People of Color. And then CX in BIPOC CX refers to customer experience.
Customer
And it
experience.
is,
Thank you. Not service. I knew I had
yeah,
that. I got
it
it.
changed it to complete experience. And It's a business that, to be quite honest, right now is on hold because I'm focused more on building out Astekah, but it's
Mhm.
going to reignite after I build out the ground floor of Astekah and probably
Okay.
when I bring on a person to help with Astekah. So Astekah is to help pull people up from feeling low and silent and second guessing themselves to a space of feeling worthy and like they can become leaders in some way, shape, or form, whether leaders of their family, their community, their world, right?
Okay.
BIPOC CX is for people who already are leaders. So
Okay.
marginalized leaders who have their own businesses, but who don't want to run a business like is considered normal under the arms of capitalism, right? So
Mhm.
capitalism encourages exploitation, for example.
Yeah, right.
Capitalism is humanizing, for example, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that is so normal and inherent to capitalism and colonialism and just the way that we operate right now that is
Right.
it's so violent and we just don't understand that it's violent because it's emotional violence that's been normalized over generations. So we don't
Yes.
understand that it's violent, right? So I want to help these people to be able to construct a vision for what actual caring, humane business would be
Yeah.
like that is based in win-win-win principles. So you treat your customers as partners, not as numbers. You
Okay.
treat your employees as whole human beings who have the potential to bring a lot to the table if they're treated as whole human beings,
Love it.
right?
Yeah.
You treat yourself as well as a whole human being. Because if the leader of an organization is not being kind to themselves, being dehumanizing and exploitative towards themselves, then they set the precedent for the
Yeah.
entire rest of the organization. So it's win-win-win. You have to make things that are based in not just win-win, but win-win-win. So that's the idea behind BIPOC CX, and that's where
That's
it is.
incredible. That's
Yeah.
incredible because it is. We are told not always, not necessarily always by our parents, just by society. Shit is hard. You know, if you want to open a restaurant, you're told immediately, within the first 5 years, most things fail. So what do you say? Well, why would I invest in that? Right? Like, why am I going to invest in something that I know is going to fail? You don't know it's going to fail, right? Things happen all the time, right? So it's those ideas that are planted in us so young all the time.
Yes.
You can't do this. These things fail. You're not going to make any money. You're putting yourself out there. Oh my God, you're going to embarrass your family. You're stepping away from our family business to do these things. And you're just pressured by society, by just in general, right? But you're right. Things are dehumanizing. You know what I mean? And there's so much of that suppression that makes you go, I guess I won't even try at all.
Yes.
And that shit is so sad because the amount of talent and promise there is in this world, especially, and again, nothing to other ethnicities, but especially to the people of color that are told for generations, you cannot do this. We are literally told you can't do this. There's other
Yes.
ethnicities, specifically whiter ethnicities, that are not told that. They've got generational wealth, some of them, right? Like they're coming up from generations of money. Again, this is not common theme either, obviously, but there's a lot of the time, there's not that thought that's like, yeah, you can't do this. You can't do this. You know what I mean? It's very, very common
Yes.
for people of color to be told you can't do it.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I would never tell my children that. My children know I'm like, look, you're good people. My job is to make sure you're raised good people. My job is to make sure you're protected. I am not always emotionally regulated. I told you I just flipped that on my son earlier, and that's something I'm working on too, because you get triggers there too. But I want my biggest goal is to make my kids feel safe because I didn't have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's when I look at your business model, when I speak to you, that I feel that safety off of you
Yeah.
and that your goal is to radiate that out.
Yeah. One of the things that I've said a lot over the course of the last 4 years is what the world actually needs is more safety. It doesn't need more anything else. It
Yeah.
just needs more safety. because with more safety, then everything else comes. More love, more creativity, more innovation, more resources, more everything with more safety. And so there's stuff that I can get into about the way that society is constructed around control principles rather than
Mm,
flourishing, right? And so that's why you see a lot of stuff that's geared around fear tactics, for
yeah.
example, or suppression tactics, because the goal is to control. That's the goal, right?
Yep.
But that's not a truly flourishing community, society, family, or group of people. So, with more safety instead of control, with more safety would come more just bountiful solutions.
Yeah. Just more
Bountiful solutions.
everything, right? Just more
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
That's a view I've never heard before. When I think of safety, obviously we think of the world not being a very safe place
yes.
in general. I had that conversation with my daughter earlier. I'm like, you're, my daughter's getting ready for college. She's going away to Europe this year. She's doing things that I never got a chance to do, but I'm able to give her those opportunities. But in the long, but in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my God, that main theme is this is a scary ass world and it will do anything to hold you down. So to hear it from that point of view that with more safety, everything else comes with that's actually expanding the way I even think of it like that. For me, I think of safety as my safety, my parents, well, them too, but my family's safety and my kids and protecting us in that bubble with all the crap that's going on. But not to think about if there was just more of that in every community, then people would feel better to be themselves. And if you're yourself, the good parts of yourself, not whatever, then and people are more accepting of those things, then it would be more flourishing. That's so enlightening to me. I never thought of it that way.
Yes. And even if you can't think about the fact that you deserve better, this is not who I was.
Yeah.
I used to feel better. I used to feel more alive. And even if those things weren't the case, what this is where I was. I was like, this is not living. Feeling
Mm,
constantly and afraid and on edge and dealing with PTSD and some PTSD. This is not alive. So I'm just going to keep climbing. And it fucking sucks right now. But the next stage is going to suck just a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit. And I just kept clawing my way up. In fact, like there was a vision that I started to tune into inside of myself because I'm spiritual as well. And I had to go through the whole process of re-examining my spiritual beliefs multiple
yes.
times
Yes.
over. But there was a vision that I would tune into inside of myself that started maybe about like a year after escaping. And it was of me like clawing my way to the
Mm,
next ledge and the next ledge and the next ledge. And each time that I climbed up to the next ledge, it got a little bit easier. It got a little bit easier. It got a
mm,
little bit mirroring what was going on in my real life. Of
yeah.
each time I climb up to the next level of stability, of knowledge of self, of healing of
Yeah.
PTSD. PTSD, it got a little bit better, a little bit better. I can tell you that now I feel so much better. So much better just existing in my body. I finally figured out how to emotionally regulate myself. Doozies of lessons around that last year of some of the stuff that I needed to heal within myself, which included inability to be able to regulate myself in the
Yeah.
moment. And I had such severe PTSD and CPTSD around so many things that even years after healing, it was still easy for certain things to make me spiral out of control.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
so, like, I've gone back so much, my ability to emotionally regulate myself. I got back my ability to be able to have goals for myself. I couldn't have goals for myself anymore because every
Yeah.
time that you set goals for yourself, sabotage, 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 delays, delays, delays. So you just stop. You
Yeah.
stop, and that starts to become painful to think about your future. It's just painful to think about having something beyond what you currently have access to. I rebuilt my ability to be able to want things, to need things. I rebuilt my understanding of consent.
Oh,
One of the most horrifying things after coming out of abuse was I realized that I've been raped repeatedly by
oh
my
my
abuser, but
God.
I had no idea
I'm
because
so
my
sorry.
understanding consent had been completely erased, but my body had been trying to tell me. So my body was rejecting him, which it
Yes.
had never done before. Not to go into too much detail, this is a very sensual body, but my body started to reject the shit out of him. And my body was screaming at me, he's making you do things that you don't want to do. You're doing things that you don't want to do. I was letting this person rape me because I didn't understand that it was rape. Didn't understand that I could
Right.
say no because it was erased from me. And
Right.
I got back my understanding of consent. I healed my relationship with my body, which took all this time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
healed
It does.
I got back my trust in myself, and I had to go through that multiple times. I rebuilt my ability to be able to be a critical thinker. Like, there's so much that I healed, and I'm very grateful that I got a chance to heal. That at the very beginning seemed impossible, and I read was nearly impossible. And
Yeah.
I just wouldn't fucking stop because it was no way to live the way that I was living. It was no way to live. I did not feel human. I felt animalistic.
Because it
I,
wasn't living. It's not living. You are existing and that's it.
yeah,
And when you go to those things, it's just disassociation, right?
yes,
I have found myself a couple times during, and both times the same thing, where my body was rejecting completely. It wasn't a non-consensual thing. And I'm so sorry that that happened to you because that happens to don't get me wrong. I've had experiences with that in the past, but in those particular cases, but even in those, my body was rejecting. And that's when I also knew. And not just rejecting, by the way, your body, like I said, holds the score. You know very well when you are significant other stepping out. Your body, women, if you do not know, I'm going to be very candid right now. Things like your pH balance alone will tell you everything you know about what's going on with somebody else, right? Not just what's going on in your body, because you're that right there, that's your body's balance. That's naturally supposed to be balanced. And when there's an imbalance there, it is very indicative of a lot of other stuff
yeah,
going on, and your body holds that score all the time, and there's so many different ways. And what I'm praying for, even with this episode and being blessed to speak to you, is that other women and men too, because the thing is, we're talking obviously
yes.
as women, right? You can be in a same-sex couple and deal with a narcissist, right? You can be a woman who is a narcissist, we know because we've had them in our families, right? Women who are narcissists who, the men are in narcissistic abuse. People laugh about this stuff, but that is all abuse. Women can abuse men and they do, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
do. So it's so important to have, not everybody has a support system, which is why I applaud you that you're putting yourself out there to try to help people like me, who I've been on this journey by myself in a sense, trying to re-find who I am, right? And allow my voice to be a catalyst for that change, and be unapologetically myself, where I
Yeah.
always felt I had to not, I couldn't be, right?
Yeah.
Like all the time. So speaking to you, having you on this show is a blessing. I don't care if this is 2 hours long, it's going on, but someone is going to enjoy every second of it because I think that one, the message is so great. I think you're great. I told you that. Girl, I'm available anytime you want to do something together, work together, you give me a call. Because I just love what you're putting out there. I do. I love what you're putting out there. I really do. Amparo, could you possibly do me a favor and let our dear listeners know if they're interested, where can they find you? Where can they reach out to you? Any of that information to get to you.
Yes, so they have a few different options. They can go to my website, which is astekah.com, and it's spelled Astekah, not the typical way that you usually hear that word, and I'll explain why after I share this. But
Okay.
Astekah.com. they can go to, I have a link tree. So I think it's linktr.ee/Astekah. I'm on Instagram as well. So at Astekah_. They can email me. So they can email amparo@astekah.com, AMPARO @ASTEKAH.com. So those are all the ways that they can reach out to me. My website has my coaching, my group coaching, my meditations, my workbooks. It's all with the purpose of helping people to feel worthy again and joyful and badass. And just wanted to say a really quick note about the name Azteca. So usually when someone hears the word Azteca, they think Azteca, right? That
Yes.
spelling. It's because the word Azteca, as it's written out in my business, Astekah, has a different meaning. So that word is a Nahuatl term. Nahuatl is a language of the Aztecs for people from Aztlan. And Aztlan is our ancestral home of the Aztecs.
Wow.
So for me, it's like a reclaiming, it's a coming back to original value, original pride, original home,
Mm.
original safety. So that's why that's one of many reasons why I decided for that name.
It's beautiful. It's
Thank you.
beautiful. It really is. And you're right. I wouldn't have thought of that. But when you hear Azteca, the first thing I thought obviously too was
Yeah.
Aztec. When I say like I think of mine as Tainos, right? It's that Native American. It's back to real self. Like, we have Africans, we have Europeans, we have Tainos. That's who we are, the Caribbean, So it's very all that tying back to who we originally were before all that other crap screwed everybody else up, right? Oh my
Thank
goodness, Amparo, thank you
you.
so much for gracing me with this conversation. Truly, I'll say it again, it was a blessing. I feel like I have again, I hate to say it like a sisterhood, like it's a fantastic thing. It's not like we're out there, doing, but it's just the idea that that you can survive this stuff.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
everybody's able to get out. And I'm hoping if someone's in this in any way that they know there are ways to get out. It's not easy.
Yes.
It's not easy financially. It's not easy mentally, physically. It's scary, right? You do fear for your life leaving, even if it's not physical damage, meaning like you're not scared someone's going to kill you in some cases. It's still physical because you are literally changing your physiology when you're leaving, and everything that you know.
It is very hard to escape, but after you escape and you start the healing process, that's when you actually get to live for the first time. You get to live. You get to experience yourself. You get to witness yourself. You get to see yourself as this very beautiful human being the more that you heal for the first time, possibly in your whole life,
Mm.
and revisit or maybe visit, learn for the first time what actually matters to you and what makes you a human being.
Mm.
So, yes, it's hard, but it's harder to not leave. It's okay if you can't. A lot of people can't.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. It's too hard. Society does not make it easy. Society
Mm-mm.
makes it hard to
Yeah.
escape and to heal.
Yeah.
But if you, and once you do, and you start going through the healing process, you start to see what life actually is. And
Yeah.
I'm fully aware. I've been aware this whole time that as awful as it was to go through the process of ripping open,
Yeah.
the trajectory that I was on from the point in which I escaped was so much better than the trajectory that I had been on. I don't honestly know if I would be alive right now if I hadn't been rescued when I was. So I'm very glad that I left and that I've healed as much as I have, and healing is wonderful. And that's all I want to share.
And I'll say to you, for myself, to our listeners, regardless of where you're at, the best is yet to come. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'll thank you for my listeners. And you all know where to reach me on IG at Prosecco Queens Podcast or via Gmail at Prosecco Queens Podcast at gmail.com. We are also on YouTube at Prosecco Queens Podcast. So please like, subscribe, view us, share us, and I would love to hear all of your opinions and ideas and This is my labor of love, so I hope you all truly get something out of it. Much love from your Prosecco queens. Take care. If you feel that you have been a victim or are a victim of narc abuse or domestic abuse, please feel free to call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-SAFE or 1-800-799-7233. It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline. Please remember, you don't have to do it alone.